What it is, what it do, let me give y'all something new. Welcome back to another video, and today we're doing a little reaction video to a video that I seen earlier that pretty much intrigued me into watching it with you guys. I wanted to react to it instead of watching them naive when I'm grubbing on something, which I usually do. I wanted to watch it with y'all. So that's exactly what we're fun to do today. Sit back, relax, grab some water, some Mickey D fries, and let's get into the video. Let's go. Oh, that definitely looks better. That definitely looks better. I like the fucking lighting on this one. I think I'm about to keep it this way. Okay, let's get straight into the video.
The beginning of the rise didn't look like the beginning of a rise. Not far from the tiny country of El Salvador's capital city, San Salvador, is a smaller city, Santa Tecla. And not far outside of Santa Tecla is the tiny coffee town of Nuevo Cuscatlán. Though only a 7-mile, 12-kilometer drive from San Salvador, this 7,000-person city feels far away from the busy
capital. That ain't even that bad. That's not that bad.
It was here in 2012 where 2,754 voters put their faith in a young, business-savvy political newcomer for mayor, defeating the Conservative Party opposition by the slimmest of margins. But such a narrow margin didn't dim the young Nayib Bukele's ambition. While he ran with the leftist FMLN, Bukele's campaign from the very beginning focused less on party lines and more on purpose. Energetic 30-year-old bent on snuffing out crime and corruption and investing in education, infrastructure, and community development.
See, that's exactly what a fucking politician. That's exactly what a politician is supposed to do.
First came education. Upon taking office, Bukele announced he'd forfeit his salary so could instead help fund a scholarship program. Reading program, Salvadoran press celebrated that in 2015, the city was free of illiteracy.
So far, what I'm seeing here is Nayib basically became president of El Salvador. We all know who he is, do your research. So we're basically doing right now, our research about him. But as far as I know, and what I heard, pretty fucking awesome dude. He's been doing some crazy shit like this. Some good shit, actually. Not crazy. Kind of crazy, but good shit like this. And I really want to learn more about it. So that's pretty much the gist of me watching this video. Let's get back.
The third town in the department to reach the mark and moving it well ahead of the national average. The other metric that Bukele would go on to tout in future campaigns was that while he was in office, Nuevo Cuscatlán only saw a single homicide. While the exact number was disputed, the exceptionally low homicide rate was a major point of pride, as the country has been fighting the violent and entrenched MS-13 and Barrio 18 gangs since the end of its civil war in 1992. It's been an uphill battle against the hyper-violent and incredibly cruel gangs since Bukele was a teenager, so no matter how relatively safe the small town was to begin with, in a country with a legacy of gang violence, such a safety record was as much an accomplishment as education definitely got a legacy, right? Mayor. Moving fast and not worried about how the city would pay for things, ground broke on a new library, and the city embarked on a multi-million-dollar water project that would make drinking water available 24 hours a day rather than the meager 3 hours available previously.
See? This is exactly something a fucking politician is supposed to do.
Exceptional provincial town to
like, this shouldn't be amazing. Let me pause it. There shouldn't be an amazing thing to hear. There should not be an amazing thing to hear. This is something that basically should happen. That should already been a thing. This is like such a good thing. At the same time, like, this is what a politician is supposed to do. And most politicians don't be doing shit in their job. They don't do shit. Like, they damn near. I work security and I do more shit than them. And I basically sit my ass on a chair and on my phone. But I'm done talking shit. I'm done talking shit. Let's get back to the video.
Just took bold action, the town proved. Things could change for the better of everyone. Here he posted clips of his interviews and debates that aired over local television. But he didn't stop at just getting his message out. He used the platform to further an image of a man.
I wouldn't mind going back to watch those videos.
Posting videos of him moving through the town,
kind of get like idea of what's in his in his head and what's his point of view and perspective on things. I wouldn't mind watching those. The brand building wasn't confined to the internet either. On everything that the mayor touched, the library, the hospital, the signs at city limits and construction sites alike, and the podiums from which he spoke, was now a light blue N, which replaced the city's prior logo and highlighted the positive transformations directly connected to Nayib Bukele's term. Wings.
While mayor for only a single 3-year term, journalists now visiting years on are hard-pressed to find a single person in Nuevo Cuscatlán that has a bad thing to say about him. While Bukele's time as mayor was transformative,
bro, he got no haters.
It was also things
besides
beckoned
MS-13
as both
and like,
he and the FMLN
besides
recognized
them,
that the new
got
guy
no
with
haters.
bold ideas and a record so sterling had huge potential in a political environment dominated by aging voices of the Civil War that had ended decades ago. The logical progression was the mayor's office of the nation's capital, an office that would garner more attention and potentially position the ascendant politician for a presidential run. While San Salvador dwarfs Nuevo Cuscatlán, Bukele took a similar approach. He built a new library, reinvigorated old shopping markets, invested in infrastructure, spent serious money, and signed off on glitzy vanity projects to ensure his image rose along with the city's. Salvadorans followed, and his popularity continued to rise. Nationally, though, other trends were on the rise in equal proportion. By the time Bukele took office, a truce between MS-13, Barrio 18, and the national government had recently collapsed. In 2 years, homicide rates had more than doubled, and by 2015, the country was seeing an average of 18 homicides a day, while its 103 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants had ballooned to the world's worst rate.
How small El Salvador is? That's a lot.
The nation's prisons were beginning to overflow as the federal government leaned back into heavy-handed gang policies that threw more and more gang-affiliated Salvadorans behind bars. From 2010 to 2016, the country's total prison population grew by more than 11,000, while the incarceration rate hit 579, far outpacing any other Central American country and nearing the top of the list globally. While Nayib Bukele's name recognition was expanding and image as a big idea reformer was sharpening, the country was crumbling. Gangs killed dispassionately, while the government arrested citizens indiscriminately. Salvadorans were nothing short of desperate for change, as the threat of gang violence now impacted every aspect of everyday life. Old politicians and old policies just weren't enough anymore. A lane emerged. The fallout with FMLN took Bukele off what appeared a predestined path towards presidency. He clearly couldn't join
not gonna see another politician be doing that shit.
Either support, precedent suggested a successful presidential run.
And he's hella young
impossible.
too. He's like what, like 40 right now?
He forged on. Wanting to form his own party, but unable to in time for the upcoming election, Bukele teamed up with the Grande Alianza por la Unidad Nacional, meaning his incredible
bro got the widest fucking teeth. What the hell? I'm jealous.
Both traditional nominees, backed by the traditional parties, ran traditional campaigns, rotating between TV appearances, radio interviews, and stump speeches about why they'd be the best person to put at the helm of the Salvadoran political system. Bukele, meanwhile, argued that the system itself was the problem. He promised to gut the establishment and its corruption, largely delivering this message through Facebook and Twitter, attaining skyrocketing engagement with each. His few physical campaign events more closely resembled parties as he hosted dressed like a Silicon Valley CEO, not a suited presidential candidate. As election day neared, the polls trended increasingly towards his direction, and so confident in his position, he didn't even show up to the debates, unwilling to even engage with
bro said, not worth my time. It ain't worth my time.
It may have been risky,
and it works,
but
it fucking works.
The FMLN candidate attained 14.4% of the vote, the Arena won 31.7%.
That's a fucking flex. That's a fat ass fucking flex.
37-year-old outsider commanded 53.1%.
He could brag forever about that one.
That the almost inevitable runoff wasn't even necessary. On June 1st, 2019, Bukele assumed office.
Yeah, bro, give him his flowers, bro. Give him his flowers.
Salvador. Change came quick. In the days that followed, Bukele unveiled his so-called territorial control plan.
Whoa.
Bukele unveiled his so-called territorial.
She cute.
Transform El Salvador from one of the most dangerous countries in the world to one where people could simply go outside without fear. It reportedly had 6 phases, with a 7th to be implemented only if the rest didn't work. Each phase was only unveiled at its start, but the first started just 20 days into his presidency and was dubbed Preparation. Essentially, the idea was to just start, to use the resources on hand to do what they could to start to fracture gang structures. The next phase was Opportunity. Perhaps as a way to foster public support before the more heavy-handed phases to come, this second step involved using a $91 million loan from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration to invest in community centers, skate parks, schools, and other services that would work to prevent young people from joining gangs in the first place. But phase 3 was where things got tricky.
What happened?
The name was modernization, and the idea was to buy the country's national security forces some $109 million in equipment.
Damn, bro.
Drones, helicopters, guns, everything they need to fight an all-out war with the gangs. The only roadblock to implementing this was that the $109 million loan, again from the Central American Bank for Economic Integration, would have to be approved by the country's legislative assembly. The Legislative Assembly, however, was formed by an election in March 2018, almost a year before Bukele's election, long before he could influence an outcome. Therefore, the Legacy Arena and FMLN parties held 53 of the 84 seats, a firm majority, while Bukele's adoptive party, Ghana, had just 10. Essentially, in order to do anything, including get this $109 million loan, the president had to appeal to the lawmakers from the two parties he had just convinced the entire country were the problem in his campaign. Unsurprisingly, the parties pushed back, asking for more transparency on where funds would go, leaving the loan and phase 3.
Bro, that's crazy. Hold on. That's crazy. So basically, like, he talks shit about the other two fucking political parties, right? He has the audacity to ask them for cash to get money out them fools. And they said nah. The fact that he has the fucking balls to do that, this is a whole fucking man right here. That's a whole fucking man. Bro, I got huevos.
Territorial control plan deadlocked. This is where things got iffy. Supposedly, the president invoked one of the powers granted to him by the Constitution, Article 167, Part 7, which allowed the office holder to convene an extraordinary session of the Legislative Assembly when, quote, the interests of the Republic demand it. While vague, many questioned whether the lack of approval of a loan constituted an extraordinary situation worthy of an emergency legislative session. While lawmakers squabbled over whether this was a legal maneuver, and therefore whether they would attend the Sunday session, Bukele pushed back, saying it was their constitutional requirement and threatening them by publicly reminding everyone of Article 87.
Loopholes.
Article 87 of the Constitution states that people have the right to mount an insurrection if lawmakers
He pulled out the
fail to
fucking
follow the
receipts.
Constitution, and
Nice.
therefore, Bukele implicitly asked his supporters to come to the Legislative Assembly prepared to overthrow the government. So they did, surrounding the building, but ultimately only 20 of 84 lawmakers showed up, far from the minimum needed to legally vote on legislation. Regardless, Bukele arrived, and not alone. Marching into the chamber with him were dozens of police and military personnel donned in military fatigues and armed with rifles. While they surrounded lawmakers, Bukele delivered a brief 10-minute speech demanding a return to what he considered constitutional order, furious that the majority of lawmakers disobeyed his dubious order.
They don't believe in him.
Now,
They
the key
didn't believe in
question
him.
was what this event actually was. Was it Bukele bringing in the army and police essentially as props? Visual devices to convey the importance of passing the legislation that would better equip them? Or was it a show of force, an implicit threat? A reminder to lawmakers that the guys with the guns were on his side, which they very much were, given the $109 million he was about to give them. Time continued in 2021. On February 28th, the country voted in a new legislative assembly, and Nuevas Ideas, the new party founded by the president, decisively swept. This was no surprise. Through this all, Bukele was incredibly popular. Opinion polling hovered around 90% approval rating, making him one of, if not the most popular president in the world. This popularity translated to his party winning 56 of 84 seats. That's to say, they alone held a majority. No longer would Bukele
See,
have
us
to
in the
face
US, we
opposition
gotta
of the
take notes.
majority of the
We gotta
legislative
take
assembly.
notes.
No longer
We gotta
would he
take notes
need
on
to
these
concede to
motherfuckers that
FMLA
running
arena wishes.
the office.
So just one major roadblock remained: the Supreme Court itself. Thanks to the new Nuevas
Hold on, I have
Ideas
an
majority,
unpopular
though,
opinion that I want to say. I feel like the closest person that would have got to doing something amazing like this for the United States would be Kanye. Back to the
was a
video.
vote. The president said the body was making arbitrary rulings that were impeding his ability to manage the pandemic. The national legislature voted to dismiss the 5 dissenting judges, and Bukele filled the bench with 5 new ones that would vote as he wished. Bukele now, by proxy, held
what the
all
fuck is
three
that?
branches of power: executive, legislative, and judicial. And with that, he could do, well, just about anything he wanted. El Salvador's weekend of March 25th through 27th, 2022 was tragic. Nobody's exactly sure why, but the gangs were mad. Whatever it was, some 87 seemingly random people were murdered, and Bukele was furious. So he went to the Legislative Assembly and they approved a 30-day so-called state of exception suspending constitutional rights. Police wouldn't have to tell people why they're being arrested, they wouldn't need to read them their rights, detainees wouldn't have a right to legal counsel, and they could be held for up to 15 days without seeing a judge.
Oh, that's kind of fucked.
The state of exception paved the way for mass arbitrary detention. So that's exactly what came quick. Police and military swarmed gang strongholds, arresting any known members, but also arresting anyone who appeared that they could be in a gang.
Damn, bro, they threw like a Hail Mary on that one.
To get thrown in jail.
Hey, yo, hold on, no. Can we go back real quick?
But also arresting anyone who appeared.
Hold up. I'm gonna pause at the right time.
Tattoos by themselves were enough to get thrown in jail.
Hey, yo. That tattoo looks kind of familiar, you know. Looks hella like, you know. I feel like I've seen it before. I feel like I've seen that tattoo before. I feel like someone I know has that tattoo. I'm not saying who it is, but someone I know has that tattoo and didn't know that it might have a meaning. If it does, that person may or may not be traveling to El Salvador anytime soon. But no, that has to be the same tattoo. It looks exactly like that tattoo. I'll double check later. Let's get back to the video.
Police were reportedly subject to daily arrest quotas and encountered little blowback for false arrests, pushing them to just arrest anyone that they could imagine being a gang member. By midnight Sunday of that tragic weekend, some 600 people had been arrested. By the end of the week, 6,000. And now, 1 year on, with the state of exception having been renewed and renewed and renewed, nearly 70,000 suspected gang members have been detained. 2% of the nation's adult population is behind bars, in overcrowded prisons stuffed 3 or 4 times beyond capacity, waiting to make their way through an overburdened judicial system. Mothers and fathers still search in desperation for their arrested children.
Bro does not play.
Down in the system even after a year.
They fucked around and they fucking found out.
Here, to the brand new Terrorism Confinement Center. This facility was built.
See, what happened here is they fucked around and they found out. That's what happened here.
And opened for business in early 2023. While in March 2022, the country averaged 4.8 homicides a day, a bump upwards over the year's average of 3.1, April, the first full month of the roundups.
See, it might have like sounded kind of fucked up how he was just arresting random ass people off the street just because he got tattoos and everything. But if you realize, the only way his plan would have worked is if he would have done exactly just that. Just arresting people and like not giving a fuck who the fuck it is. And look what happened. Look what happened. The numbers are showing that shit worked. Kind of fucked up. But at least there was a positive outcome to it. So, yeah.
People can actually walk the streets, actually live life without fear. The feeling is free.
See, that's something they're supposed to do.
Changing.
That's something they're supposed to do. They can't even do that. They can't even do the basic necessity of walking in the street. Now they can.
Brighter future. Bukele is as popular as he's ever been. The checks and balances of power may have been degraded, the judicial system may have broken down,
protect this man.
Thousands may be unjustly detained, but in the opinion of the vast majority of Salvadorans, the ends justify the means. The people want Bukele to remain in power. He has seemingly solved the nation's biggest issue in a way that the people are supportive of. He's done the job he was democratically elected to do. Across every step in the process, he has retained the support of the people, even as he consolidated power across all 3 branches of government. He now has few, if any, legal checks on his power, considering he's able to modify or
See, what bro could have done the entire time he's been in office was sit down on his fucking, like, no office chair a nice, comfy ass fucking office, president chair and everything, made out of leather and like diamonds and all that gold. Just fucking talk shit on Twitter. Like could have just done that like his entire fucking time that he was elected. But instead, he did something that was supposed to be done. That was part of the job description when he applied, right? Yet he actually did it. Other politicians did not. So again, we fucking with Naive, right? We fuck with him.
Interpret the Constitution as he pleases. He is essentially a democratically elected dictator. The dissonance between the opinion of El Salvador and that of the rest of the world has an air of paternalism to it. It feels like the developed world.
This is the first time I heard a dictator has a good thing, by the way.
Best, that the Salvadoran people are incapable of making decisions for themselves. This dynamic has been a feature of the nation's relationship with the US in particular for decades. The superpower has long meddled with domestic Salvadoran politics. Much of the supposed international concern is likely rooted in this.
I'm pretty sure all the previous Salvadorian elections, the United States did have some part in it. We're kind of like shifting some like moving parts in a couple of these elections. So I'm not saying anything. I'm not saying that they I'm not accusing them of manipulating that election or any elections that happened in the past. All right, just know that anything that comes out of my mouth is taken unserious and should not be proven truthfully. Let's back to the video.
Yes, a condescending feeling of impossibility that the country truly figured something out on its own. The potentially more accurate understanding of the sacrifices being made to solve the crippling crisis of gang violence. Leaders come and go. Even if Bukele is a perfect, benevolent dictator for life, he will eventually leave office, either democratically or through death. It is possible.
Let's hope it's not the second one. Let's just hope it's not the second one.
The democratic system get in the way of progress. It's putting all of its eggs in one basket and making long-term sacrifices for short-term gain.
Bro gambled and won.
Maybe the people are right.
He fucking
Maybe
gambled
it's a
and won.
sacrifice worth making to solve the #1 issue holding the nation back. As a sovereign nation, the Salvadoran people have the right to decide on their own.
All he did was take away some of y'all rights, right? He took away some rights for a little bit, but that's about it.
If that means
give them back.
The democratic election of a dictator. The accessibility of smartphones these days has changed a lot, but one interesting thing I think it's changed most dramatically is what happens when we don't have something to do. If we're waiting for the subway or to pick someone up or for a class to start, we tend to now fill those moments by checking Twitter or scrolling TikTok or some other way of getting a quick hit of dopamine because we tell ourselves that there's really nothing productive or meaningful we can do in 5 or 10 minutes. This has nothing to do with the video. But all those 5 or 10 minutes really add up, so rather than wasting them, you can use them to learn something new.
Oh my god, is this link share?
Brilliant. They're a STEM learning platform that designs these incredible.
Yeah, we're skipping that. Sorry, the video's over. The video's over. We're not watching no more. I'm not giving them no free clout. I'm not giving them no free fucking ad. No, can't do. No, can't do. Well, that's the end of the video. I liked it. I kind of learned more on some aspects of him and the country that I never really knew. So how he kind of it wasn't as easy as a process as I figured it would be. I think it kind of makes sense though. Anyways, it kind of did make sense. How was it gonna be like some thing you could just do with snapping your finger? But hey, small things do make a difference. And him made a fat fucking difference. All I'm gonna say is we fuck with Naive. We fuck with Naive.